Today we got my client's Ben rolling footage from Grappling Industries, and he starts off getting dummy swept, which is pretty funny. You don't really see that too often. But the first real thing we're going to break down is after he gets in this reverse De La Hiva scenario right here, he goes to ashi garami. And the first real issue you can see is because he's not actively engaging his core and getting his hips high on off the mat, he's not getting that hip-heel-knee connection that he needs to get a really good strong bite. He ends up doing something smart and using that free hand to get the sweep, but let's listen to Placido explain how to do correct ashi garami and then learn how to do the ashi sweep.
3 words to help you develop your ashi garami. From here, the 3 words are going to be hip, heel, knee. Hip, heel, knee. I want his hip connected to my heel and my heel connected to my knee. If I can connect his hip to my heel to my knee, I'm going to get a very strong ashi garami and be able to off balance a lot of people.
We give a bridge with the idea of taking our partner's knee out in this direction. Here.
Now, as Ben drops back for this ankle lock, there's a couple things we can address here. So for one, when we go for an ankle lock, it's not just the flexion of their foot down towards their heel, but it's also the rotation around their body. So rather than dropping straight back from the seated position, it's actually better to drop to that one shoulder and then try to arch your chest down towards the mat. Doing this also keeps your collars farther away from your opponent, which makes them harder to grab. It's hard to see what Ben's grip looked like, which may have influenced why he didn't get the finish, but I also noticed that his ankle is in his opponent's crotch rather than his knee. This exact scenario actually happened to me in competition, where as I dropped back for that ankle lock, because my ashi garami leg in the middle wasn't hit my knee pushing his hips away and only my ankle, it wasn't a really strong frame and it allowed my opponent to get his chest closer to mine.
3 things are going to happen. I'm going to press into my limbs. So my shin and my foot are going to press away his hips. My hips are going to extend forward and my shoulders are going to pull back. At the same time, it's not just in this plane. I'm going to start to rotate downwards.
Ben ended up getting stuck in mount for about 2 minutes, and there's one principle that I really want to go over. Your main goal from the bottom position is to maintain that inside elbow control. You cannot allow your opponent to let their knees or their arms dominate that space. It's almost as bad as giving up an underhook. And if they do manage to separate your elbows from your ribs and get into an high mount, you need to rock the boat in order to recover that inside elbow position. Just like here, how when Ben gives a gigantic bridge, this guy has to post out really far and all the space opens up for Ben to recover that inside elbow position. Then in Ben's second match, he ends up locking up a Kamura from bottom half guard, but in order to finish that, you actually need to be in either a close guard or have at least one of your legs on the Kamura side of the lock. I actually had this same exact exchange, and the only thought going through my head was how can I disconnect my legs so that I can get them on the Kamura side of his body so that they can get more involved and have a stronger lock. In his third match, Ben ends up locking up a triangle, and he does a really good job of grabbing his own shin to make the lock tighter. But there's 2 things I want to point out here. From here, Ben starts getting brutally stacked, and there's a lot of early stage defenses to this, but this late in the game, his only goal should be to get his head offline of his opponent. If he had better early stage prevention, it would look something like this. You would arch your back to stiffen out your spine to make it harder to collapse as you walk your shoulders back and then cut your angle using that underhook. This moment right here would have been the perfect opportunity for Ben to underhook the right leg and cut his angle to make the triangle way tighter.
You need this push-pull, okay? The best way I can explain it is using my hands to reinforce like that, okay? Get that first, lock with that tension, mid-calf, not at the ankle. Look at that. When I go to the ankle, he gets much more breathing room. Okay, both shins facing almost the same direction, curling it.
And if for some reason you couldn't underhook that leg and finish the triangle by scissoring your legs, you can just finish it from straight on, and you can use the theory of the box that Matt Arroyo explains really well here.
So picture right now there's a box, okay? My legs are the walls, my hips are the floor, and my hands on top of his head are the ceiling. I wanna close in that box and I wanna crunch it to nothing. So how do we close the walls in? My knees come together. How do we close the ceiling in? We pull his head down. How do we close the floor in? We raise our hips. We do all these together and we get a tap.
In Ben's last match, he ends up getting stuck in side control for a really long time, so let's explore some options for him to escape. From this position where your opponent has their far hip down towards the mat to prevent you from re-guarding with that inside knee, you can actually go for something called empty half.
And when I do get to here, I have to stiff arm you so that you can't follow me.
Okay. Man, that's super interesting.
Okay, and then all of a sudden,
And from this empty half guard position, once you stretch out their leg and insert your bottom butterfly hook, you can actually just rock them back and forth to recover your guard. The next thing I wanted to point out was this freeze frame right here, where Ben literally has 0 frames with his upper body. Ideally in side control, your right hand is monitoring their hip, and your left hand is either underneath their chin or your bicep is on their left ear so you can give them a big bridge. Bottom side control, once we establish our inside frames, we're gonna take our outside foot to our butt and we're gonna bridge as hard as we can as we look in that direction. We're gonna push them with our frames and leave them there as we shrimp our butt out and shoot our knee back in to recover our guard. We're gonna do a big bridge into our opponent. That'll allow us to circle in our underhook. We wanna get that underhook as high as possible. Then we're gonna take our bottom knee and knee them in the butt to shoot their weight over our head. That'll allow us to then build up to our knees. And then here, Ben gets stuck in like a shitty Kesagatame, and he ends up going for like this kind of pendulum looking sweep, but I don't think that's the best way to escape Kesagatame. I think actually getting your elbow down on the mat is probably better. And listen to Jordan teaches Jiu-Jitsu how to do it.
If you're getting stuck in Kesagatame and want to escape, ideally you want to get your elbow down, and that's going to be easier to get to your knees, take the back. But if your elbow is stuck, there's no way of getting it down. You want to bring the person over, but it's going to be very hard just to pull them over, especially if they're bigger than you. So what you can do first is pull them over your head and then over to the side. So Tony's going to give me a lot of resistance. He's not going to let me. So watch. You pull him forward and then to the side.
Behind his butt. I really push him and turn. Pull my elbow back. All right? But as soon as you move the leg a bit forward, you will notice that this knee, or sometimes this knee, can touch on his tailbone, right here. My goal is to make my opponent on top touch his head on the ground. I'm helping with my hand. He's holding pretty tight, good base. I want to create space to be able to turn my body towards him. And notice that when I do this, I really push him up. See here my knee? I'm helping him. Really push him stronger. Look, I use the hip and the leg. Turn.